I happen to be one on the Republican side of the aisle that thinks that the Supreme Court needs to have a code of ethics. I think most people in this country think that the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, those 9 individuals, actually has one. All of the lower courts do. We certainly do in our legislative branch and the executive branch.
That happened today in the Senate Appropriations Committee, where the committee discussed Senator Chris Van Hollen's amendment to an appropriations bill to withhold $10 million in funding from the Supreme Court's budget until the Supreme Court adopts a code of ethics. That's an attempt to go at this issue through the Appropriations Committee, kind of a full court press by Democrats. But one Republican supporting the proposal would not be enough for the bill to clear a 60-vote threshold on the Senate floor with that amendment attached to it. It would be, in Senate terms, what they call a poison pill for the overall bill, which does have bipartisan support.
I find it hard to understand how an amendment that says to the Supreme Court of the United States of America that you should have a code of ethics just like all the other federal courts becomes a poison pill. I guess it's a sign of where our politics has taken us.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. He's a member of the Senate Budget Committee, and he chairs the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee that oversees the Supreme Court's budget. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Legislating, of course, is a very patient, requires a lot of patience. I saw you pick up one vote today with Senator Murkowski, but this isn't the day where it's going to move. Is the action now moving to the Senate Judiciary Committee?
Well, that's right, Lawrence, and you got the political math exactly right. I had hoped to attach this rider to the appropriations bill, withholding the $10 million until the court did the right thing and finally adopted a code of ethics. But it was very clear that if we went down this road, that Republicans were going to filibuster the entire appropriations bill and not let that move forward. And while we heard that Senator Murkowski supports the idea in principle, as you say, ultimately we need 60, which means we need 9 more Senate Republicans. So I did withdraw the amendment so that we wouldn't crater the appropriations bill. But next week, a week from today, in fact, the Judiciary Committee, Senator Durbin has indicated that he's going to take up a bill that Sheldon Whitehouse has introduced that would require the Supreme Court to finally have its own code of ethics.
This is the kind of legislating that I have to say I admire, because it's not about the win that day. It's about putting the pressure on from every possible angle you can find, including appropriations, which is always an extremely important angle that is often ignored, but can sometimes be very, very powerful in order to bring attention to and pressure on these kinds of issues.
Well, that's exactly right, Lawrence. And we're trying to bring pressure on the Supreme Court from every angle. There have been some indications that the Supreme Court is feeling the pressure, that Justice Roberts recognizes that this has become a self-inflicted wound on the Supreme Court and is leading to a great loss of public confidence in the court. I mean, as Senator Murkowski herself said, who doesn't think the Supreme Court of the United States should apply the same kind of rules to itself that it's applying to all the other federal courts, the district courts and the appellate courts? Do they really think they're somehow above it all and so good that they don't need standards to govern their own conduct? And it is kind of crazy that the highest court in the land has the lowest standards of all the federal courts. So I do think the pressure is building, but we're going to keep it up. We're going to keep it up because apparently it's hard to shame the Supreme Court, but we're going to keep at it till they do the right thing.